What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Gotta Get Back, the Samurai Jack and Review Show. My name is Kyle, your host. Welcome to Project Potter, guys. Thanks for checking out the channel. This is episode 49, and we are doing a recap, guys, for every episode. We're doing a favorite character, a favorite scene, a score out of 10, and some trivia. This is the Four Seasons of Death, so this one had a little bit more to it. And without further ado, guys, here we go. Okay, guys, so as the name suggests, the Four Seasons of Death, we get the title card here, which not every episode has. Almost none of the episodes have. But we start off with summer here, and Jack is kind of wandering through what looks like a desert, as he does. And he's going through and he's sweating, and the sun is hot, and he puts his, he like kind of rearranges his gi and puts it around his head like a turban. And there's a cool like side shot where he's walking through, and he's seeing all these mirages, and there's like these dust clouds, and they form into like these monsters with green eyes, which we see over here. And Jack is like swinging at them, and his sword doesn't do any damage. And then he eventually realizes, like, oh, I just need to chill out and like meditate. And so he just like calms himself, and then slowly walks through, and he realizes that none of them can hurt him because it's like the mirage or the desert, or I think it's like hallucination basically of the heat exhaustion. And then like a spring comes up, and he's like, these mirages never end. And then he falls into the water, and he's like, oh, this is actually a real one. So that's kind of how he gets through summer. We go over to fall. I really like this one. There's like a little like scientist guy. He's like a little here, let me actually, can you guys see him? Here, let's do a quick, this guy down here. He's like a little scientist guy, and he just loves collecting leaves or whatever, but it's like a really cute scene because he's getting all these leaves, and he's excited in fall, and he runs back to his windmill laboratory. And it's really funny because every time he goes to the door, he has to wait. The windmill goes literally in front of the door, and he has to like stop and wait for the windmill to pass, and then he goes through. So he like goes down into his basement or his dungeon, and he puts these leaves, which like crushes up and puts into vials and turns it into like this potion. And then he like finds out that he needs more flowers, so he like runs back up. And it's funny because he goes to the door, waits for the windmill to go by, then he goes over, crushes some flowers. There's like a bee chilling by. He actually eats the bee, but he comes back in, and then once again waits for the windmill, and made me laugh every time. And he goes down and he crushes them up, and he puts it together, and he's clearly like mixing some sort of potion there. And he's all excited, and he's like finally got the potion. His laboratory looks really cool. But he eventually like uses some Bunsen burners and mixes matches, and he puts it into like a vial, and then he comes out once again, waits for the windmill. And it's really cool because we get a side shot, and like the wind is flowing and there's stuff in the air. And he goes over to like a local well, and then he is like scheming, and he's sweating because it comes up with like these two little pills eventually that he puts in like a blender. And before he does that, and then he throws that like mix into the well, and he's like, perfect. And he waits in the leaves, and we see Samurai Jack come along, and we're like, oh, Jack is going to fall for this trick. And of course, as a viewer, we know he's not going to, but he's sitting in the bushes, and he's watching, and Jack goes over to the water, and he kind of tests it, and there's a big like ladle there, and he takes a sip, and then he like starts choking, and he falls to the ground. The guy goes over, and he's like, perfect. And he's going to like grab Jack's body or something. I don't know what he's going to do with Jack. But Jack was faking. He actually grabs him, turns around, and spits the poison into the scientist's mouth. And then he turns into leaves and fucking disappears. And I was like, wow, dude, that was some powerful potion you got there. But Jack literally faked his own choking because he knew that the guy would come over. So super good on Jack there. But that's how we get through fall. I really just like that whole sequence. We then go to winter, and we see a bunch of orcs, and they're like working in these mines, and are like gathering this material, and they're like throwing into like lava pits, and they're using molten lava, and they're like forging this sword, and then they like throw it down to have it freeze in ice, and then they bring it out in ice. And I don't really know why they did the whole process, but then eventually it breaks. There's like a dragon that breathes on it that they have captured, and then there's like these forgers that are just using a hammer on it. They're sharpening the sword, and then that's all done so that they like draw on the sword. There's like a monk in there or whatever. It looks really cool. And the guy who's like the king of the last one, he so they have like a battle royale basically. He shoves the sword into the rock, and it like electrifies the rock. And then there's like a huge drum that goes off, and there's a huge battle. And it's basically like a battle for the sword to be the ruler, kind of like the ruler of Mandalore or whatever. And so we get this battle royale where they're like, just beating each other up. And there's one dude who's doing really well, and he's like throwing like a boomerang basically, and he crushes like a spike ball. And he goes out there and he grabs the sword and he kind of claims victory, and it's like an electrified sword. And we're like, oh, sweet. Then he goes, waits outside the winter, and he's just got the sword chilling there. And then Jack comes along slowly. And I was like, man, that's so much work for Jack to just wreck him. So Jack comes along, he's freezing, and his gi is blowing in the wind, and he's got his hat on. It looks super cool. We get an awesome shot of Jack looking through the straw hat, and then like his eyes are down, and he looks up, and he sees the orc, and the orc takes out a sword, and he goes one big swing, and then Jack just flick of the thumb, really, and his sword comes out and cuts the blade in half, and the ogre is just sitting there like defeated, and Jack moves on. It's a really beautiful shot. So that's winter. Then we move to the final season here, guys, which is spring. This one I wasn't crazy about, but Jack is like walking through. There's a bunch of dead trees. It all like starts blooming and coming to life around him. And there's like this beautiful like enchantress or whatever that's sitting there, and she's like, "Oh, you're such a noble hero. Like your quest must have been tough." She's like, "Why don't you stay, and like you must be weary from your travels?" And he's like, No, I must go." And she's like, no, you should stay. And she's like, obviously like using her sex appeal on him. And there's like this great like river that she makes. And he's like, well, I am kind of weary. And he sits down, and he's kind of cuddling, or he's like sitting on her lap or whatever. And then he like looks up and he sees like these flashes of like violence. And it's like Aku's face. And suddenly he's like, oh no, I have to go. And she's like, no, you must stay. And she like puts these weeds around him. And he's like, no, I must go. And then he like has to get out of the weeds, and he takes his sword out and he starts chopping all the weeds. And then this is weird because she kind of like pops up and just like explodes. And then there's just an opening, and Jack goes through the opening. But then she's like chilling behind. So she like tried to keep him, but then she didn't really try that hard. So that is how the episode ends. And those are how Jack escapes the 4 seasons of death. Okay, guys, the magic sword for this one, I'm going to just give it to the 4 seasons, actually. Even though I wasn't crazy about the summer one, really, or the spring one at the end there, they all had their own different styles. And I think it was really cool how there was like a lot of effort put into both. I just thought the summer one was like a little too, like, oh, there's just like these spirits going around. I'm like, all right, but it's like the heat exhaustion and, the mirages and all that. So I get that. The spring one I thought was kind of weird. Because she just had vines, and she's like, all right, it's like poison ivy. And then she's like, no, I'm good. The winter one I thought was awesome because that was like so much work put in there. And the fact that they like battle it out to defend that land or whatever, then Jack just comes over and he just takes him out right away. And then the guy in fall where he's making the potion and he's waiting for the windmill every time, I thought that was really funny. So all in all, I thought it was 4 like really cool balanced stories for the most part. And so I'm giving my magic sword this episode to the 4 seasons in general. So a Portal in Time, guys, I have to say, if I had to pick like a sequence, it has to be the windmill guy, the fall guy, because it's just so funny. Like it made me laugh every time that he like went over there, and he was super excited. He's like running over with the crushed leaves, and then he just has to wait for it to like slowly go, and like makes that sound every time, and it goes through. And then he goes in there, goes to Ender's lab, and then he's like, oh, I need more flowers. And he like runs up, and he's so excited, then he just has to wait. It's like getting to a stoplight. So yeah, that whole sequence where that little scientist guy is going in and out, and he's got to wait for the windmill every time was really good comedic timing. And that's going to be my Portal in Time for this week. So yeah, I was a big fan of this one, guys. So for a score, an 8.9 is what I'm going to give this, because I just like that they kind of had fun with it, and they showed the 4 different seasons, and each one was so different. And like I said, even though I wasn't really a huge fan of summer or spring, the winter and the fall ones where I really enjoyed. And so I did like the variety there, and how we got 4 mini stories in there, and how Jack kind of took each one out. The one with winter especially, I was like, I saw the orc battle and all that, and I was waiting to see if like Jack was going to be one of the orcs undercover or something. And then I was like, wow, this is a lot of like exposition and a lot of work just to be dethroned so easily. But that made it so much better because they go through all of that just for Jack to come by and be like a quick flick of the thumb on a sword. So Yeah, but a fun episode overall, and I think the shots were cool, and I just really like the way that they changed it up. So you weren't, even if you didn't like one, kind of like I did with Spring, I didn't stay on it too long, and we did get to see the 4 seasons, so they got to have fun with the backgrounds, I'm sure, and we got different races and all that. So yeah, just a fun episode. Okay, guys, so for Jack Facts this week, we have a few here. So in addition to the obvious motifs of each story, the episode's title also references the fact that this is the 4th season of the series. So that's interesting, 4 seasons of death. And that does hold up because Jack has been going through 4 seasons of death, basically trying to get back to the past. So nice little clever little second meaning there. This is also the 2nd episode to have more than one story. It doesn't mention what the first one was, though, and I'm trying to remember what that was, and I'm just blanking. So, but hopefully that makes sense to the fans out there. And then I think they must have lied to us last week on Jack Facts, because if you guys remember last week, I said that this was the last episode with Iwamatsu as voicing Aku. But then this Jack Fact here says that this is actually the last episode of the series in which Iwamatsu voiced Aku. And then he died 2 years later in 2006. In the 5th season, Greg Baldwin voices Aku. And we'll have to compare it. No one holds up to the original, but I think Greg Baldwin does a really good job of Aku. It's different in season 5, if I remember correctly, but it's really like pretty close to the original. So so this is apparently the last episode, but I don't even think Aku is like, I think he's in it for a very brief second. I don't even know if he says like almost anything in this episode. So the last one where he fights Jack is really like his last extensive episode. But this, I think, is like officially his last episode. But I can't trust these Jack Facts now, so who knows? But and then just a fun little one, guys, here for the last one. This is the last episode in the series where Gray Delisle is credited by that professional name. From season 5 onwards, her appearance credit her is Gray Griffin due to her marriage to Jared Griffin. So just a voice there, and she got a name change. So good for her. Congratulations. And those are our Jack Facts for this week. All right, guys, that's it. That is 49 episodes in the books. So that's another episode of Gotta Get Back. I did enjoy this one. It was a good time. I like the variety, as I mentioned. So we got 3 more in season 4, guys. So we're almost toward the end there. Thanks for checking out Project Potter. Thanks for checking out Gotta Get Back. Go check out the other content on the channel. I really do appreciate it. Like, comment, subscribe, ring that bell notification. And until next time, guys, gotta get back.